The guard found him staring at the frost on the window, lips moving without sound. A folded piece of paper rested on his lap, edges worn by trembling hands. "If they ask," the prisoner whispered to no one, "tell them it wasn't forgiveness I wanted." The light flickered once, like the cell itself was holding its breath. A knock echoed down the corridor 3 times, slow, deliberate. The night shift had begun, and so had his final wish. Elias Ward had been in Graythorn Prison for 7 winters. He no longer counted the days, only the sounds, the hiss of the radiator, the moan of wind through barred glass, the hum that meant another hour survived. Once, he'd been a city accountant, the kind that smiled politely and made enemies quietly. But Graythorn wasn't built for polite men. They said he'd forged ledgers for a company that crumbled under its own secrets. The truth was more complicated, but truth didn't matter. Here only stories did, and every inmate had one. Elias had no visitors, no letters. The only thing that came for him was the light that crawled through his cell slit at dawn, landing on a scrap of concrete he called the honest spot. It was there he'd kneel every morning, whispering to the memory of someone he couldn't name aloud. The guards joked that he was writing to ghosts. They weren't wrong. He'd lost someone before the trial, before the scandal, the kind of loss that hollowed a man out, until even guilt sounded like company. On the 7th anniversary of his sentence, the warden gave him a notice, parole hearing, 1 week. It wasn't mercy, it was procedure. But something in Elias shifted. He began writing again. Not numbers this time, not confessions. Just one letter, folded and refolded until the creases became veins. That night, a storm pressed against the walls like it wanted in. The power flickered, then steadied. The guard on duty, Riker, leaned against the bars and said, "You get your hearing soon, Ward. What'll you do if they let you out?" Elias didn't look up. "Depends if they call it freedom or another sentence." Riker smirked. "You're one of the quiet ones. Quiet men usually break loud." Elias's eyes finally met his. "I'm already broken. I'm just deciding where to leave the pieces." When Riker left, Elias unfolded the letter again. The words were simple. "If I don't make it to the gate, give this to her. No name, no address. Just that line." He sealed it with the stub of a pencil and pressed his fingerprint into the paper like a signature of absence. That night, he dreamed of water, a river, slow and black, carrying something that looked like a photograph but dissolved when he reached for it. He woke to the smell of wet metal. His window slit was open. That was impossible. On the sill lay a feather, gray, cold, and real. Elias stared at it for a long time before whispering, "So, you found me." By morning, the feather was gone. Only a faint, damp mark remained, like memory had touched the stone and left a bruise. The parole hearing came sooner than he expected. The board sat behind glass, faces blurred by reflection. Elias stood with his letter tucked inside his sleeve. They asked questions about remorse, rehabilitation, repentance. Words polished by policy. He answered in the same quiet tone. "I've repented for what they think I did. I'm still paying for what I actually did." One of them frowned. "And what was that?" Elias smiled without warmth. Silence. They denied parole, of course. Men who spoke in riddles rarely walked free. But something in the warden's expression lingered, a look that said, "I don't believe you, but I want to." That evening, as the cells dimmed to half-light, Riker returned with a small envelope. "Found this in the mail bin. No return address. Just your number." Elias's pulse stuttered. Inside was a single sheet, typed, "The river doesn't forget. Midnight. East Gate." He stared at the words until they blurred. Graythorne had no East Gate open to inmates. Only the transfer route, the one for bodies and broken things. Still, when the lights went out, he slipped the letter under his shirt and listened. Every drip, every step in the hall, every hinge breath. When he heard the faint clang from below, he moved. Graythorne's basement corridors weren't made for walking men. The air was thick, laced with the iron scent of forgotten things. Elias moved by memory more than sight. Years ago, he'd helped an old janitor repair a boiler down here. In return, the man had said, "Every prison has 2 doors, one for the guilty, one for the grieving." He found the boiler room. Rust had eaten its edges, but the faint heat was still there, pulsing like a low heart. Beneath the grate, water ran old drainage tunnels that led somewhere beyond the walls. The river, maybe. He dropped the feather into the grate. It didn't sink. It floated, then drifted out of sight. He followed. The tunnel bent and narrowed. Rats scattered, their eyes glinting like lost coins. The sound of running water grew louder. He crawled until his palms bled, until the air turned wet and open. When he rose, moonlight hit him like confession. He was outside. The river was real black, wide, patient. On its bank stood a figure in a coat, holding something small. "Elias Ward," she said. The voice was familiar and foreign at once. He stepped closer. "Ava." She didn't deny it. Ava, the woman whose testimony had sealed his fate, the one who disappeared after the trial. He had buried her face in memory, but here she was, real as winter. "You wrote me letters," she said. 7 years of them, all unsigned." He looked down. "You read them?" "I burned every one, except the first." "Why?" "Because it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to him." Her voice cracked. The river sighed. Elias's throat tightened. Their son. He hadn't said the boy's name in years. The one night he was supposed to pick him up. The one night he didn't. The fire had taken everything before he arrived. The scandal had taken the rest. Ava held out a small box. Inside, a toy car, charred. "I found it when they tore down the house," she said. "It still rolls." Elias reached for it, but she pulled back. "You can't fix this, Elias. Not with wishes." "I don't want to fix it," he whispered. "I just want it to stop echoing." She looked at him like he was a shadow. "Then what's your final wish?" He closed his eyes. "To trade my silence for peace." They stood in silence as the river gnawed at the shore. Then came the distant wail of alarms. Floodlights swept the trees. Graythorne had noticed the missing prisoner. Ava stepped back. "They'll shoot on sight." "I know." "Then why stay?" He smiled faintly. "Because every story ends where it began." He pressed the letter into her hand. "If they ask about me, tell them the truth." "And what's that?" "That, I finally told someone why." Ava hesitated. "You think confession will save you?" "No," he said, glancing at the feather now caught in the current. "But maybe it'll set the current right." The light hit them then, harsh, white, final. A voice shouted through a megaphone. "Prisoner 412, stand down!" Elias turned toward the sound, hands raised. The toy car slipped from the box and rolled into the river. He watched it float away. For the first time in years, he felt weightless. They took him without a struggle. The warden was waiting at the gate, rain dripping from his cap. "You could have made parole next year, Ward. Why throw that away?" Elias looked through the bars, toward the river. beyond. Because freedom without truth is just another cell. The warden frowned. And what truth was worth this? Elias smiled faintly. That forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned. One silence at a time. He reached into his shirt pocket, pulling out a final scrap of paper. It read, "My wish isn't for release. It's for her to stop dreaming of the fire." The warden stared at it, then at him. "You'll spend the rest of your life here." Elias nodded. "Then I'll have time to keep my promise." The feather drifted through the air vent above, spinning once before landing at his feet. Weeks later, Ava returned to the river. She placed the letter in the water, watching it dissolve. The toy car rested beside her, half rusted, still capable of rolling in circles. She whispered, "He got his wish." At Graythorn, cell 412 was empty except for a faint imprint on the wall shaped like wings. The guard who cleaned it out found one note carved into the stone. The prisoner's final wish was never freedom. It was forgiveness. The wind carried the words through the corridor, soft as a prayer that no one claimed to have said. And somewhere in the hum of fluorescent light, a feather turned once and was still.